Let's bring in our Wednesday mega panel. That's Mark Tapscott, editorial writer for the Washington Examiner, Democratic strategist Bob Shrum, and former Bush economic speechwriter David Frum, editor of FrumForum.com. Welcome, gentlemen. Mark, we tried to get you to have a name that rhymed with Frum and Shrum. Frum, Shrum, and Tapscott. It's more like a law firm, I think, than a bit of haiku, but it's the best we could do. Now, let me start off. We had, obviously, this Twitter town hall today, so in the spirit of our president, I do want to tweet you the first question I had, which is this. Don't real people ask better cues or questions than the political pros? They focus on substance, rehousing, jobs, loans, etc. Boehner tweets talking points. David Frum, don't real people do a better job than some of us pundits?
Real people want answers. Politicians have a way of trying to frame the debate to get you talking about what they want to talk about. I find all of these questions at the Twitter town hall sort of amazing in that it is like a patient who's choking on a chicken bone in front of you, and you say, so what are your plans for the future? How are you planning on redecorating the bathroom? I mean, we have an impending meltdown of the global financial system in front of us, and I would think that would be the question that would be at the top of my mind.
David, you say that with such sort of finesse. I think your hair should be on end. Bob Shrum, what do you make both of the whole Twitterverse with our president and what about these debt talks coming up tomorrow? Are you hopeful?
Yes, I am. I actually think people don't really understand the whole debt ceiling issue, people in general. I think there are a couple factors that militate in favor of ultimately getting to an agreement. The first is the president can't afford an economic decline, a global financial catastrophe, as David puts it, a double-dip recession. And secondly, while Republican presidential candidates might welcome that, Boehner and the House Republicans can't be sure that they wouldn't get blamed. I suspect there's a Team B in the White House working on how they handle this if it gets to this point. In addition to that, Republicans, I think, would like a deal that gets them off the hook on Medicare, especially on the Ryan plan. And the president can do that as part of this deal. Well,
Mark Tapscott, do Democrats really want to take Medicare off the table? I understand the substance of it, and we all know, as mature adults, that in the long term, we're going to have to find a way to slow the growth of Medicare. But right now, that's really the Democrats have the Republicans kind of over a barrel on that.
Matt, this is not a hard one to figure out. What's going on here is when John Cornyn said, let's do a short-term deal and then come back next year and relitigate it, that set off a four-alarm alarm in the White House, because what would happen if we did do a short-term deal now, we would be talking about spending budgets, deficits, the national debt between now and the election, which is another way of saying Obama's record would still be the central focus of the campaign. They want a long-term deal now to get Obama's record off of the public debate.
And long-term, at least, is at least through long-term in the United States politics now means through November 2012. Obviously, we're going to be watching this through tomorrow. Turn to another topic. Very scary warning issued by the TSA, the Transportation Safety Authority. David Frum talking about the fact that there may be, although there was no specified threat, that there's apparently buzz that they're picking up, that the idea of potential terrorists surgically implanting explosives in their body, not just hiding it somewhere in a body cavity, but surgically, people who are willing to die to inflict, terrible harm on folks, may be willing to surgically implant stuff in their body. What should we make of this?
I think we're having here a little bit of an experience that people in Washington often have, where you have these brilliant people at Homeland Security who are thinking, what would I do if I were a terrorist? And they come up with plots 10 times more frightening and more effective and more sophisticated than the terrorists ever do. I think the beginning of wisdom here is to understand that we have been winning the war against al-Qaeda for a long time. Since 9/11, each terror plot that has been attempted or foiled, or even the ones that have tragically been carried out, has been less sophisticated than the one before. And you look at the decline from 9/11 itself, through Madrid, through London, to the ever more feeble plots that have been uncovered since 2005 and 2006. These groups are finding it harder to communicate. They're being broken up. We're winning. This is what success looks like. It doesn't mean the problem goes away. It means they can't communicate. They then come up with wild schemes, not actual plans.
Bob, David's point of view is reassuring, yet I still get a little freaked out thinking about the fact that if someone's willing to die, and we know there's a certain number of folks who've been recruited to this effort across the globe, maybe this is the next scary frontier in terrorism.
Well, it could be, but I think David is right. We've made a lot of progress here. And, you know, you need some pretty sophisticated surgeons operating in pretty sophisticated ways to create these human bombs. The one thing I think this does do is probably advance the case for scanners. My wife has had a knee replacement. When she goes through the regular security, she has to be patted down and wanded. The scanners immediately show what's there, and I think assume they could do the same thing if somebody had a bomb implanted inside them. So if this is a really serious threat, I think we'll all see a lot more scanners, even if we don't want to.
But Mark, that depresses me, Mark. I travel a lot, and my wife has gotten me a little worried about all the radiation you get, and I seem to be always the guy they pick for the for the full scan, and I've been taking pat downs. It takes forever. They try and talk you out of it, and they try and tell you that the radiation's not as bad. They clearly have TSA talking points meant to put your mind at ease. So what do you make of this whole latest TSA thing?
Well, I guess maybe you're just suspicious looking, Matt. Let's face it. I think we should remember one very important characteristic about especially the Muslim Brotherhood. If you go back into the literature and the demographics of al-Qaeda and the terrorist movement more generally, one of the most striking aspects of it is the fact that they tend to attract an awful lot of people who come from, in the Middle East, from the professions, especially doctors. So I think we should be very, very careful before we dismiss this as something that is beyond the terrorist organizations. Maybe it's beyond al-Qaeda right now. That doesn't mean it's not beyond for other parts of the terrorist enterprise.
All right, Mark Tapscott, Bob Shrum, David Frum. I always feel a little more secure when I've got insight from guys like you around. Thanks for taking the time.